Hello everyone, welcome back to another deck profile. Today we're taking a look at Greedon, as much requested down in the comments. Thank you, I heard you. Sorry it took a while, but we're finally here. Let's start off with our ride line. We have the grade 0 that everyone has. Same thing when rode upon, if you're going second you draw a card. Our grade 1 says when this card is rode upon, we can reveal Greedon from our ride deck and then we can draw a card. Our grade 2 says when this card is rode upon, we can put a card from our hand into the soul, and then we can search for a copy of himself, but we'll get to that later. We're not running any more copies of him, we're searching for a different card. Our main grade 3 is still Greedon, but we're never really gonna use his skill anymore, so he's not really all that useful here. He's just here to look pretty in his nice purple suit. Ching! We are of course running 4 copies of the new Greedon Masques. This is our main boss unit. He's kind of similar to old Greedon, but a lot better. First of all, we can remove a Greedon from anywhere, and then we can search top 7 for a Desire Devil, so this helps us filter our deck and have pieces on the board to restand. His second skill allows him to restand by putting 3 rear guards into the soul, but this has one important condition. You need to have 3 Desire Devils in your soul. If you do not have this, you can't activate the skill, so keep that in mind for later.
This is spoken from experience?
This is spoken from experience, yeah. If you manage to Soul Blast one of your 3 Desire Devils and don't have a way of putting one back, you will not be able to play the game. So keep this in mind. We are of course running 3 copies of the Mask of Hydrogrum to search for our Greedon Mask, and we're also playing 8 copies of the Dragon Tree Wretches, so we have quite a lot of targets in this deck to find. We are of course running 4 copies then of the Skull Kemna. This allows us to search for a mask, but this is also the card I was talking about. You can call this down early on grade 2 or grade 3 to search for the masks if you don't have it, but be very careful with what you Soul Blast. If you don't have a Desire Devil in your hand to put into your soul with the grade 2 of the ride line, you should not activate this, because you will not have the 3 Desire Devils in your soul. So be very careful with that when activating it. Next we're running 3 copies of the Burb. The Burb is a new addition to this deck from D-BT11. This basically replaces the grade 2 from the ride line, because this card says in deck it copies all the names of the Desire Devils in your soul, so you can search, when you activate this skill, you can search for a copy of himself, but this card is has the same name as that card, so you can search for the Burb instead. Now what the Burb does is, when you have 3 or more Desire Devils in your soul, he gets plus 5k power and 5k shield, so he's a pretty big beater in this deck. He's probably gonna be like one of your only, or like, you're probably only gonna do 1 or 2 attacks besides Greedon, so he's your best attacker in the deck. Next we're running 4 copies of Desire Devil Fujo. This is a really important card in the deck. He has 2 skills. When he's put to soul by your Vanguard's ability, you can retire one of your opponent's rear guards, so that's pretty good. It gives Greedon access to retire and board control. And next, when you attack with your Vanguard, you can bind this card from the soul to have your opponent need to guard with 2 cards for this attack. So if you can keep doing this every turn or every effect, your opponent's gonna need to put down a whole lot of cards from their hand to guard, and this is basically Greedon's win condition. We just throw a bunch of guard restrict at our opponent. We're also running 4 copies of Desire Devil Incane. Now, you probably remember this guy. He's been in the deck for a long time. He's our triple drive guy, but he's pretty expensive. He costs 2 CB, but he gives plus 5k and an extra drive to our Vanguard. Also very important in this deck now, if you Persona Row this turn, you have to Soul Charge 1. It's a mandatory skill. I've seen a lot of people forget about it, but you have to do it. And usually, yeah, it's gonna suck. Yeah, you're gonna Soul Charge that trigger, but you have to do it. So keep that in mind. Next up, what is in my opinion the most important card in the deck is the grade 1 Dragon Tree Wretch Demon Sherider. Now, he has 2 skills on place. You can counterblast 1 to create a Dragon Tree marker. You could use this, but you're not gonna use this very often, maybe once, because you do have quite a lot of CB in this deck, and if you create a Dragon Tree marker, you can put it on this guy, and he will hit for 13 or 23 on Persona Ride, or more importantly, you could put it on the bird, and the bird will be 30 on Persona Ride, so that's gonna ask for more than 15k shield, so that's magic numbers. But that's not really all that important. What we care about is the second skill. It's an act skill. We can Soul Blast 2 to call a grade 1 or less from our soul in the same column as this card. Now this is pretty expensive, so if you soul blasted anything already for Skull Camera to search for your mask, you're not going to be able to activate this on your first turn, but on your second grade 3 turn you can activate this. You can soul blast for example the mask and Greedon, regular Greedon, to call out the grade 1 from the right line, which is very good in combination with this card. So you're gonna have this in the front row and this one in the back row, and when this one goes into the soul, you can Cardinal Blast 1 to have guard restrict for the entire turn. So every attack following this, your opponent is gonna have to guard with at least 2 cards. And this is basically the combo. You keep soul blasting 2 every turn to call out this grade 1, or if your opponent is at low damage, you're probably not gonna need this. You can also call out Incane to have access to your triple drive or anything you need. You could call a copy of himself or a trigger just to fill up your board so you can restand more easily and don't need to commit any cards from hand. As for RPGs, we run 3 copies of the Effect PG and 1 copy of Elementary Sanctitude. Yeah, it's pretty obvious why you want to run this, but one important thing is Elementary Sanctitude is very good against this deck, because if we activate the guard restrict, this actually goes around it, because the guard restrict says you need to put 2 cards on Guardian Circle at the same time, but this one doesn't actually go to a Guardian Circle, it's a Blitz Order, so it just activates. So keep this in mind if you're having a mirror match, for example. You can activate this in response to the guard restrict and you'll be fine. As for our triggers, we run 3 fronts. The reason we run fronts and not draws is because draws is just gonna accelerate us going deck out. And we draw quite enough by doing enough drive checks that we don't really need draws in this deck. Plus, if we have 2 front row rear guards and we have 4 drive checks, we're quite likely to check one of them, which is gonna be really nice.
Big is good.
Big is good! Next up we run 8 crits because, yes, flipping yellow is our win condition. If you don't sack in this deck, you're probably not gonna win. We of course run 4 heals.
Dying is bad.
Dying is bad. And lastly, we run 1 copy of the Dark States Overtrigger. Probably get away with running the new blue OT, but I still prefer this one, because if we check it early, it's 10k and a crit to our Vanguard, which is really nice pressure in a restanding Vanguard deck. So yeah, if you want to, you could run blue OT, but I still prefer this.
And if you're a good player, you check it every game.
Yeah, if you're a good player, you check this on grade 1 and you just sit there with 10k and a crit, just bullying your opponent to death.
How often have you checked this OT while using this deck?
A couple of times, but usually it's in my opening hand or in my soul for some reason.
I love seeing you place NK Soul Charge 1, COT.
See, I'm a Dark States main, I don't check OTs. Okay, so now let's go over a little test game, if you will. First off, I'm gonna try explaining mulliganing. So, what you want to do in this deck, you basically want to have 1 or 2 cards in your hand, and then you're just gonna put all the rest back. So, as you see, we drew Greedon, so we can keep Greedon, but other than that, we're gonna put everything else back into the deck.
So you had a heal, a Demon Strider, and what was the last card?
Another Demonstrator. Okay, we didn't find it, but basically we want to mulligan for Skull Camera or the Mask, and then we're all good. So, let's go over a simple game. First off, we're probably gonna discard this, and then go into our grade 1. Then pass to our opponent, goes back to us.
You'll probably take 1 damage, I guess.
Yeah, let's say we took 1 damage. Say we took 1 damage. Ah shit, that kind of sucks. Then, going into our next turn, we draw. Let's discard this, let's say. Then we go into our grade 2. We reveal Greedon. We draw a card. We drew into the Mask. That's perfect. That's everything we need. We can basically swing at our opponent. Let's perform a drive check. Okay, PG.
Healthy.
Then going into grade 3, basically, let's say we took another 1.
Wow, you're messed.
Yeah, that kind of sucks, but we found one, so we're fine. Let's say we took another one. Let's say we take even a 3rd one. Okay, defensive. Now, going into grade 3, we draw. That's pretty good. We have to discard. Let's say we discard our masks. We go into Greedon. We have to put a card from our hand into the soul. We have a Desire Devil to put into the soul, so that's pretty good. We're gonna... actually... Yeah, we're gonna do that. And I'll show you why we're gonna do that, because we can basically just get it back anytime we want. Then we search our deck for the bird. Nice FR bird.
If you want the shuffles, get our member only.
Okay, now, very important, even if we are going first, we still want to go into Greedon Masques, because regular Greedon is basically too overcosted at this state of the game to really activate. Like, if you're stuck on base Greedon, yeah, you're probably not gonna win the game, in my opinion. You might be able to, but it's gonna be rough. So if you're going first, but you preferably go second because you want that persona, right? But if you're going first, you still go into the masks. So we activate the mask from our drop zone, we ride into Greedon, we don't persona ride. Next, we can use Demon Shredder. Let's say we pay Carniblast 1, we get a Dragon Tree marker. We're gonna put it over here so we can hit. Then we're going to activate his skill. We're going to Soul Blast these two, and keep in mind we still have our Desire Devils in Soul. We're going to Soul Blast these two. Now we can choose which one we want to call. I'm going to choose Incane because we're still in the early game. We need more hand. Our opponent's probably at pretty low damage, like maybe 1 or 2. So there's no reason to call the guard restrict yet, because our opponent could just say like, okay, you activate guard restrict, I'm just gonna take it. I'm at 2 damage. Why would I guard with this many cards? So that's why we want to have Incane. Next up, we're going to remove a Greedon from the game to check top 7 for a Desire Devil. 4, 5, 6, 7. Let us add... I'll just show you. We can choose Incane or we can choose the bird. In this case, you're pretty fine choosing either one. We have the bird in hand from our right line and we have Incane, so I'm just gonna check. It's probably fine to just call Incane. Well, this card gets added to your hand.
More shuffling.
More shuffling.
This time you haven't seen the OT, so it might finally happen.
Ooh, it might just happen. It wasn't in my opening hand for once.
On a test game, you will get to see the OT.
Then we're just gonna call this, and we're gonna call the bird. Keep in mind, the bird gets extra power because we have 3 or more Desire Devils in our soul.
Shout out to the guy that made these.
Yeah, shout out, if you go to any BCS in Europe, shout out to the guy who's selling these power counters. They're really nice, they're relatively cheap, and yeah, I'm just so happy I finally got them. Shout outs to you, man. So next up we can decide, we could put Demon Shredder into a soul, but we're probably not gonna want to do that, so I'm just gonna call down a crit from my hand. Yeah, you might think this is pretty bad, but I prefer doing it this way. If your opponent is stupid, he's just not gonna attack into this, and we can just keep cycling grade 1s from our soul. So let's go into a regular turn. We attack with Greedon for 13. Let's say our opponent no guards. First check. Second check, front trigger, pretty nice.
Already worth it.
We get 10k to our front row. Already worth it, already paying off them fronts. And then we activate the skill of Greedon, we put these into the soul, we get 5k, so we're at 18, 28. And then next up we're gonna play Inking skill, Carniblast 2, plus 5k, and triple drive. And we'll be at 33 triple drive, and that's pretty scary. So First check, second check, third check. Okay, well.
You'll definitely survive next turn.
We'll survive, but we're not sacking, so we're not doing that great. Then we can swing with this. No, we can swing with this first, and we can swing with this, and then we can pass our turn. But for next turn, we already have our Persona Ride. We can call the Guard Restrict with Demon Shredder, and we have access to Triple Drive if we want it. So we're pretty good. And that's basically how you play Greedon. Yeah, I really like this deck. At first, when it was revealed, people were really like negative about it, I would say. They didn't think it was that good or much of an upgrade over base Greedon, but it's so much better than base Greedon. The fact that you only have to put 3 rear guards into your soul really helps the deck. It gives you 2 front row attacks. Yeah, it's just so much better. This card is insane. Like the pony, the horse, whatever you want to call it, is also insane. Like the fact that this card can just this deck can just throw Guard Restrict at you every single turn just means your opponent is just gonna sit there losing their entire hand. And if you ever notice your opponent has 5 cards in hand, like just activate all of them. Like probably the last attack they're just gonna sit there with 1 card in hand. Even if it's a PG, they cannot activate it. Just this deck is just insane, but it is very much trigger reliant. I played this deck at BCS Netherlands. I went 4-3, which is alright, not the best result. But if you look at any of the Greedons at top, we're all pretty much running the same list. Just depends on how well you play and how lucky you are with your triggers. One of the things you can do, and I've seen other people do, is you can play this deck pretty aggressively. If you want to, on grade 2, you can call down the Bird or Skullcamda and just start bashing your opponent. Be very careful though, don't do this against Gandiva or you will get punished. But against any other deck, I think you would pretty much be fine just rushing early on. Maybe call a booster, maybe call Inking behind Vanguard early on. And just start swinging at your opponent. Because the more damage they have early on, the harder it will be for them to deal with your Guard Restrict later on. And I think that's pretty much everything I want to say. I really enjoyed this deck. I hope you guys will build it. I hope you guys have fun with it. And I wish you all the luck if you participate in any BCS. Bye bye!